Welcome to InFocus, a closer look at human relations. I'm your host, Bill Bell. This program is supported by the Cincinnati Human Relations Commission. My guest today is Colerain Township, or I guess it's Colerain Township, and we're talking about community relations. I'm going to ask each of my guests to introduce themselves, and I'll start with the gentleman next to me.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having us today. My name is Dan Malloy.
Okay.
I am the Director of Public Safety, and I work with these two chiefs, the fire chief and the police chief from Colerain Township.
Okay, and this is...
Good morning. My name is Frank Cook. I am the Chief of the Fire Department and Emergency Medical Services.
Okay.
I'm Mark Denny. I'm the Police Chief for Colerain Township.
Well, I'd like to thank you, gentlemen, for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
So, community relations is a discussion that we're having, and I guess I'd start out with what is community relations in Colerain Township? What does that look like?
Well, I think the reality of it is it's Colerain Township is a very diverse community, and we enjoy that. We respect that and acknowledge that. We have high-income residences. We have properties that still have dirt floors, and
In Colerain Township?
that's correct.
Okay.
And so you can run the gamut between one or the other. And the reality is, as a servant of the people, we have an ability to deal with all and everything. So that's, if you like to be challenged, that's an enjoyable atmosphere. So it's building relationships and understanding each other and getting to know each other and answering the questions that they may have and explaining the role that we have as a public safety entity within the community. There's a lot of questions that folks ask, but we've built those. We've been working on these relationship building for a lot of years with our citizens academies, between our police and our fire departments, to build trust and educate and identify the questions and answers that are necessary for our community to understand what it is about being in Colerain Township.
So I want to stay with this. I asked that question about community relations, but was there some kind of what triggered this becoming a project or strengthening these relationships? Is there something that you may have witnessed in your community that said maybe we need to address this?
I think we've always been good at looking outside of our borders and seeing
Okay.
what's going on around us, and it's
Okay.
not hard to look around the world and see that there's police community relation problems, and while we haven't really had a major issue, we're not naive enough to know or to think that it won't come to us. We started this back in January before the rash of incidents that have occurred that people think maybe this was a knee-jerk reaction. This is something we had planned months ago,
Okay.
and something we plan on going for years. So it's important to us. It's going to be a culture change for our entire township.
You say a culture change. Could you explain?
But it's not traditionally been police, fire involved in these type of things.
Yeah.
We do our jobs. We have our job to do, and community accepts us. And we're a necessary evil sometimes. But I think we've realized that without your community's support, you're going to fail.
We both consider our agencies as proactive agencies,
Uh-huh.
where we try to get out in front of trends and right now, in society, public relations, community relations is of vast importance, and we recognize the need that we need to get out in front of this before an event or some type of circumstance happens.
Now, Colerain is not just, I don't know a lot about the community, but isn't it the largest township in Ohio?
It is the largest township in area.
Okay.
We cover approximately 45 square miles, population of about 59,000 people, so we are one of the largest townships in the state. But as far as area is concerned, we are the largest township in the state.
In retrospect, we're about the 14th largest community in the state of Ohio. So
14th
whether
largest.
city, township, whatever, we are the 14th largest, yes.
Okay. Now, you mentioned, I guess, the fluid and also dirt floors. Is that normal?
Well, characteristically, the community can be characterized as suburban,
Okay.
urban, and rural. So characteristically, we have a little bit of everything, and socioeconomically, it runs the gamut as well. We have some very affluent families there, and we also have some low income. So we run the gamut in a number of different categories.
I think that really challenges our officers to be better.
Okay.
You need to know how to deliver police service to everybody in the community, not just one segment of the community. So you have to learn how to be a 360-degree policeman. And it
You have to
teaches
learn how to communicate. You have to understand how to communicate to all facets of society, and there's not just one template that says this is how we do our job.
Now, we're talking about, in terms of personnel. but how does this relate to citizens? I mean, the Be Community Outreach, do you have any citizen partnerships?
Absolutely. We have, in this specific action, we worked with Jeffrey from the Wilder Foundation, and we've built up a core group that from our schools, from our religious community, from our business community, from just our residents, the folks that live in our community, and we're seeking input and direction from them because they are our community.
Okay.
We don't want to sit up on high and say we know the right way to go, and Jeffrey's helping us work through the facilitation of all these groups to listen and take direction from them and understand what they want from this project as much as what we want as public safety.
Now, Jeffrey's going to be on the show, I guess, later after the break, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, fantastic. So what, in terms of, since this has been instituted since January, what have been some of the things that you've been able to accomplish as in this project?
I think it's going to be a long process for us. I think in our first meeting where we really had the community join us, there's some skepticism. They don't know really what we're looking for. Maybe the trust hasn't quite built up yet, so it's going to take a while for us to get moving in the right direction. And again, it's taking young officers and officers who have 25, 30 years in making sure they understand how important this is, and that they're the face of the township.
And the same goes for the fire department. It's allowed us to engage our employees in a area that they didn't think was necessary.
What do you mean?
Community relations. I mean, we're an organization that we're out in the public all the time, but occasionally issues will surface that maybe the younger employees never gave thought to, and then how do you address it? You know, when somebody approaches the fire administration with a complaint, whatever the basis might be, you know, we've always really addressed it, but there are certain things that can be addressed in the field that maybe could de-escalate a potentially volatile situation. But
With fire?
Absolutely.
I mean, typically people call fire because it's something on fire. I don't understand how there would be it just seems a little foreign to me that there would be.
One of the challenges that we face from a public safety in both agencies is communicating with those involved in the incident. For instance, understanding why we do what we do in certain cases. It can become an issue with families or people that may be intimate to a situation. You know, if we choose to transport somebody to a hospital, not of the one of their choice, there's a reason for it. You know, depending on what the situation is, you know, we may transport from Colerain all the way downtown to University Hospital to get them the better care, the care that they need for the situation that they're involved. You know, there could be a fire situation where we've got multiple people that need to be rescued, say an apartment building on balconies. Well, we approach those type of incidents systematically, where we go for the person that's in most danger, and then we systematically try to rescue the others based on the level of danger that they're in. But you know, the public doesn't understand why we do what we do. So you know, it's of importance to us that the community is educated and understand why we do certain aspects of the job that we do.
So I can imagine if you have a 5-story apartment building, you may go to the 5th floor because it's.
If the fire's on the 4th floor and there's a person on a balcony on the 5th floor and the smoke and the flames are impinging on that balcony, that's going to be the person that we're going for first.
So the guy on the 2nd floor and the 3rd floor, he may be offended by that, but
there's
maybe
potential for that.
It's but you have to explain this is why we're doing it. Not that you're, you know, not as important, but this is a greater risk at this time.
Absolutely.
And this is what community relations is to do.
It's building that communication piece, discussing these things before there is an event, and having the opportunity to explain these are the processes, these are the tactics that we use, this is the decision-making process from the leadership's perspective, from the frontline officer's perspective, or fire, before that fire occurs, before that officer has to engage in that situation in the way that they did. They say, well, we talked about this. We discussed that at great length. They explained why they do A, B, or C. Yes, sir.
So that's the cultural change I was talking about. We're not used to explaining ourselves. We do things because we've been trained to do them in a certain way. I had a community meeting last night that if you sit down and you actually explain why you do things and what your limitations are and what your abilities are, most of the problems get worked out. It just takes a little bit of communication.
So it's a thing where, you know, you both have cadets or recruits. You have like a cadet programs, correct?
We have
I
a
think
Citizens Police Academy.
a Citizens Police
Yeah,
Academy.
Citizens Fire Academy.
A Citizens Fire Academy. So is this part of that?
Well, part of the curriculum or the presentation delivery, especially now of late, addresses what are we doing to communicate within the public and build those relationships. You know, going back to what we were discussing just before, on the flip side, it's important that we, as the service providers, understand the cultural differences that exist within the demographics. Communicating with them. Sometimes we run into language barriers, and there could be cultural issues as to if there's a medical emergency that a person cannot have this done, but we need to understand that as well and be able to address those cultural barriers or differences that may exist.
Just by nature of your occupations, you sort of focus on a goal at hand, and training and experience kicks in, and the person just sort of watches the show in most cases, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is opportunity for them to become involved in the show.
They have a better understanding of what it is that the
why you do what you do.
services. Yeah.
For over a decade, we've done Citizens Police Academies, and that's what that kind of is. We take 10 weeks and we explain to everybody why we do the things we do. And this is just kind of broadening that out to the community and allowing them to ask questions as well and give us their feedback.
As part of this, in terms of calls for service, do you guys periodically respond to runs together?
Quite often,
Quite often.
yeah.
So it makes sense that you would be partners in this because you're dealing with sort of the same type thing, correct?
We are a public safety
So-
department.
okay.
It's just so that they provide law enforcement. We provide fire protection and emergency medical services, and many times, our services of both agencies are required. Something as simple as an automobile accident. You have a person injured, but the law enforcement, police department has to investigate and maintain traffic, and then obviously we take care of the injured people or any other hazards that may present themselves.
Okay. Now, what kind of programs do you do? Like you said you had a Citizens
Police Academy.
a Citizens Police Academy, but you said that you had a community relations.
Well, we have a Student Police Academy also for our high school kids, so
Okay.
we try to start younger with that.
Okay.
And then obviously the program we're starting now, we're reaching out. And
Okay, and how does a person get involved? Is there do you just say, look, we recommend this for you, or is a person?
we welcome everyone. We want
But
people
how do
to
they
come.
find out about
We
it?
advertise
Okay.
throughout the community that these academies will be offered, and then within the school system, police and fire, both. It's a joint effort as far as the academies are concerned.
Okay.
We just feel that it's so important that we get to these young people early in life to try to instill in them or gain their interest and show them what this occupation is about. It's a very rewarding occupation. Both of them can be.
Yes.
But it's so important that we get to them early so that they could start having some ideas as to where they want to go when they leave school.
So sort of like a civics lesson also. So
Absolutely.
you talk about, hey, this is the kind of job we do.
Right.
We want to engage the public or get you, if you're interested, but at least you know what we're doing. So, there's no misunderstandings when there's a critical incident or something of that nature. This is why we do what we do.
We're just now trying to learn to use social media too. And
Oh,
that's,
really?
That's a new thing that we were really kind of trying to figure out and finding the landmines and the pitfalls of that. But it's just another way of getting out. But there's a lot of our community that doesn't use the internet.
Oh,
We
wow.
found a whole segment of
Well,
our.
I guess with a third floor, they may
Exactly.
not, or maybe they have the internet with a third floor. I
Our
don't know.
largest African American part of our community doesn't get the community paper.
Really?
We didn't realize that. So how are we going to communicate what goes on in the township with a very important part of our community? So
There's a community paper. I had no idea.
There is, there
Okay,
is.
a Colerain Township community
it's
paper.
a community press. It's
Community
Northwest
press?
Press. And,
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
But they don't have a delivery person in their neighborhood, so we need to make that extra effort to find a way to communicate.
Okay. Well, I understand that. So we have to take a break. So you're watching InFocus, a closer look at human relations. We're with Colerain Township, talking about community relations, and we will see you after this break. Welcome back to InFocus, a closer look at human relations. I'm your host, Bill Bell, and we're talking to Colerain Township about community outreach and community relationships. And Fire Chief Cook has stepped out, and Jeff Steck. Oh, I'm so sorry about that.
That's okay.
Jeffrey Steck has stepped in, and Mr. Steck, if you can just tell us your involvement in this program.
I'm the Executive Director of Citizens for Civic Renewal,
Okay.
and we are funded by several different foundations and government agencies to get citizens more involved with government.
Okay.
How do citizens work more collaboratively with government agencies and officers, like in Colerain Township, and the Wilder Foundation in particular is funding the race relations work that I'm helping facilitate with the Colerain folks.
Race relations. Okay, so tell me, let's talk a little bit about that. I wasn't expecting that kind of answer, and I apologize for that. But is there a race relations concern, or is it just something that?
Well, let me say one thing first,
Okay.
because they can't say it. There's no problem in Colerain Township right
Okay.
now that anybody has reported. My interaction with the officers and with the chiefs and with Dan, these folks are incredibly professional. They're caring people. They have
Okay.
done a lot of work already to build relationships with all kinds of different folks in the community, African Americans, Hispanic, whatever income levels, whatever the situation is.
Okay.
What the Wilder Foundation offered me and offered whatever community I could connect with is how do we stay ahead of the difficulties that we saw in Ferguson or in New York City with the I Can't Breathe protests and,
Okay.
and what happened there. Because as these guys mentioned earlier, you never know when something bad does happen. No matter how good their hiring practices, no matter how good their training, an acute situation can cause a problem. And if you don't have a really high level of trust between the community and the government agencies, the public safety agencies, you're risking that you're going to get people not hearing your explanation for what happened. And so people listen through their relationships. So the higher the level of trust, the deeper the level of relationships, the broader the relationships, the better a community can handle difficult situations, and then a better community can create a culture of public safety that works for that particular community. So it's not starting from a problem platform, it's just how do they get way ahead of it and create the community that they want.
Okay, I like that.
And I think while we don't have a specific problem, I think if the problem exists anywhere, it exists everywhere.
Okay.
Issues that happen in New York City or Baltimore do affect us. And our citizens look at that and they equate us with that. So it is important that we address those issues and don't
Well, and
act
that
out.
became part of the conversation. There's a transfer of anxiety, of fear that goes along with what's occurred in Ferguson, New York, Charleston,
Okay.
things of that nature that automatically, well, you're the police, or I've heard about this in the fire. What happened there? Why would it not happen in my community? And that really builds the reason for why, because we want them to know what we do and what we believe in, what these leaders expound upon, their accountability process, everything that goes into why Colerain is what they are. We want our community to have that relationship with their men and women that serve them before there is a question. And as Jeff said, that trusting and that building of trust is what relationships and how we can succeed.
So not just a question, but even an allegation, because somebody can make an allegation and then you have to challenge that just as you would if an actual event occurred.
Sure, absolutely. There's a lot of, like I said, when Rodney King occurred and that incident occurred in LA in the early 90s, it was translated back here in Colerain, from the recording of our stops to questioning why we used the PR-24.
The PR-24
impact was an impact weapon,
Okay.
the side handle baton that the officers used in the beating of Rodney King. Why did we do that? And now the media is so much greater than it was back 20-something years ago. The ability to see things, and people have questions and they want to know.
Okay. Now, before our break and before Jeff joins us, we talked about social media and how that's something that Colerain is starting to look at. With that being said, social media seems to be the thing that captures behavior, positive and negative behavior. And one of the questions that's come up is body cams. And can you just tell me what, I guess, your ideals are about body cam?
I'm a huge supporter. I see no downside.
Okay.
As long as you have a policy that's comprehensive and everybody understands it, it provides transparency and accountability. And that makes us legitimate.
Right.
People can look for themselves and see an issue and make a decision for themselves on how it should have been handled. That builds some more trust. And I trust the people I put on the street. If they're wrong, I'll correct it.
Okay.
But I believe that 90% of the time they're doing the right thing. And we should have no issue showing the people we work for what we do all day long.
And there's a reality in it's about protecting everyone.
Okay.
You know, protecting the citizen, but also protecting the officer. There's allegations, believe it or not, there's allegations that are made against officers and their behavior that are completely false. You know, and we found back in the early 2010, 11 that we had an incident where an allegation was made and it was significant. The only thing that saved the officer was the camera that was available through a business that proved that this encounter never even occurred.
Really?
And the officer's actions were, this person never even came close to contacting this person. And so in the chief's understanding, his response or his desire for body cameras is not built on what's occurred in the current thing across the country. He's been looking at this technology for over 3 years and trying to identify what's an appropriate technology for Colerain Township and his police officers well before the Fergusons and the call from the state level and the federal level to say, should we have officers required to carry body cameras? So in his defense, and he's been pushing for this for years, and it's just about finding the right technology.
Okay.
So imagine, in this side of this process, we were to take either Colerain body camera images or images, videos that have been on Facebook or on the national media of police citizen encounters that didn't go well. And we've already discussed as a leadership team how we might bring people together, project those on a screen, and then debrief the entire situation. What could the officer have done differently to have not gotten to the problem situation? What could the citizen have done differently? And those two things aren't necessarily related. How can each side have unilaterally gotten us to the point that everybody wants to get to, which is some sort of a collaborative, cooperative, reasonable solution? And so the process is, and what I want to be able to facilitate is challenging everyone. How could the citizen done better and how could the officer have done better? And what relationship do we want? What's the end goal? Given that officers need control, they need security and safety, they have an end result that they have to get to as far as their job. But then what kind of relationship do citizens want with police and Colerain? And how do they want to be treated by the police given what the situation is? So just the social media and the video aspect will give us an incredible opportunity to debrief very specific situations and challenge everybody. How do we get to the place that you all want to get to as a community when it comes to these guys doing their jobs on your streets?
Okay.
So that's what I'm really excited about.
Now, the community outreach part of this, did this come up in that? I mean, when you have your meetings, what do people discuss? Do they discuss behavior, or do they want police to be more involved with schools, or what typically do the residents
We
want?
broke into little subgroups. In my group, it was an issue of a community center, whether that was going to maintain or stay in our township. And it didn't really get into the police relations as much, but it was, I think it was the first opportunity they had to reach out to somebody in our government and say, this is what bothers me. And I think we'll evolve and we'll get more specific. But I think they were just surprised they had a voice at this point.
Our initial conversation was kind of a get to know.
Okay.
Everybody kind of just get comfortable with it. And the chief said it earlier, that building of trust. Is
Yeah.
this really, do they really want to listen to me, or do they really want to let me ask questions? Or I don't know what they've experienced in other settings, but that was really the focus of Jeff, and that was nice. Jeff, this is his expertise, is setting up the room for these opportunities to talk about it. In my group, it was about trust, and we got into conversations about parenting skills and job resources and building a better community, as well as officers being approachable and making themselves available to communicate. As the chief said earlier, that that extra 5 minutes to explain why did I make this decision, but it translated, and we got into the conversation about with another group that I talked with about fire and EMS service and equity in that, and ensuring that the professionalism is there when it comes to, if they come and serve me, do I get the same level of service that the Caucasian family gets or the white family gets? And because the chief brought it up when he talked about it, ensuring that we provide a professional level service to everyone in our community. It doesn't matter. It's about what's the job that's necessary, getting the job done, being professional, treating everyone as human beings, and then moving past. And that's like Jeff said, we get to a point where we could talk about everyone's responsibility and be accountable to each other, and finding that point where we're taking care of each other.
Okay. Now, Jeff, was there in this, and I know you talked about this was a brainchild since January, before any of the national things occurred. Was there a sense that maybe people felt like they weren't getting the proper service, or was it just like did you get involved because there might have been a complaint, or did you say?
No, specifically the reason I got involved with Colerain is that I had done some work with one of the former school board trustees.
Okay.
And I had done some facilitation with some business leaders and educational leaders, and talking about the future of Colerain and what did they want to do as a group of leaders to create more collaboration between business, government, and the school district. Okay. So that relationship I've maintained, and so when Wilder approached me, David Denny was the former school board trustee, and I approached him and said, hey, would you like to have this conversation? Because one of the things that came out of those prior discussions with various leaders was the perception of Colerain as the demographics of Colerain changes. Because the African American population and the low income population has been increasing. And one of the things they were talking about, the size of Colerain, Colerain goes all the way from the Beltway all the way down and touches the city. So that's where you get rural to urban. And so just like folks moved from the West End to Price Hill, where I live, folks are moving from the city to the next ring of suburbs. And that's causing concern amongst some older residents in Colerain. The perception of the school district might be changing because of the demographic changes. And so it just occurred to me, maybe that's an interesting community to do this work, because the community is in transition when it comes to demographics.
Okay. So we are, unfortunately, we're at the end of our program, end of our time. But before we close, I'd like to ask you to just put out contact information on anyone that may be interested in being a part, or would like to come to one of the meetings, or maybe have some suggestions for some things that they may want to offer to you. So can we get the contact information?
Jeff, do you have a website?
Well, you can always get hold of me at citizensforcivicrenewal.org. It's just how it sounds, no spaces. But to get involved, particularly with Colerain Township, I don't know if it's your office, Dan, or?
They can call 923-5015, and they can reach me or the chiefs. Our administrative assistant can facilitate them to us to get involved. As a core group, we're meeting later this month for an expected next conversation in late September, early October. We'll advertise that via our Just a Conversation Facebook page. It'll be advertised on our community calendar at www.colerain.org. We'll contact the media and ask them to help us just like they did before. We'll put it out on as many facets as we can and media contacts to get it out and hopefully fill the house again just like we did in July.
Okay, fantastic. Well, gentlemen, I greatly appreciate you coming. I also like to thank Chief Cook for being a part of the program, and we will see you next time.